we can start to kick it off
Yeah, yeah.
if you want.
Real quick, this is IRL podcast with your boy Mikey Digital. We have a welcoming guest coming back, Luis Tatis. How you doing, brother?
What's up, man?
It's good to have you
Pretty
back,
good.
man. I'm excited to
Yeah.
kind of just like go over some things. I feel like the last time we spoke, we got over the core things, but there's a lot of things I've realized after the fact. But let's just we'll get to that. But I kind of want to go back to what you were saying earlier because there's a little funny story I want to share with you. But yeah, you said you're about to go see a comedy show.
Yeah. So, like I'm based out of Austin, and the comedy mothership opened up recently. That's Rogan's Club. Really hard to get
Ah,
tickets. They're usually like sold out. So a couple months ago, we just saw that, and I'm pretty sure his name is Anthony Santino, is doing a couple shows this weekend. So we got some tickets a couple months ago,
yeah.
just so that we can check out the club, see who pops in.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony is actually funny. Like I don't know him from a stand up. I know him from like podcasts,
Podcast. Okay.
and he has a yeah, and he has a podcast with Bobby Lee, for Mad TV. So, which is always funny. Like anything Bobby does is typically funny.
Yeah.
So he's really funny on there. So we're hoping that translates to the show this
Well,
weekend.
and that's kind of an interesting way of marketing yourself now, right? Because like you look at Joe Rogan and you look at some of the guys, the original dudes that have been doing podcasts. There were a lot of them were also like comedians, if I remember correctly, or at least they dabbled in it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm talking about like Joe Rogan's like circle of friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I can't really speak for all these new guys that's out, but like I know when Joe Rogan was going heavy before Spotify, like when he was just starting, that's when he still had hair. You know what I'm saying? Like he was doing like stand up and all that stuff. So like, I think that's a really smart marketing, a way to kind of like expose yourself. Because I could imagine how hard it is being a stand up comedian and getting some kind of exposure. Because like, I don't know, it's one of those things where like you have to be
Yeah,
in a rare
and
exception.
it's one of the few areas I think in entertainment that naturally translates to good podcasting. Like I think it's obvious in hindsight, like
Yeah,
because we see it, it's easy to say that now.
yeah,
It doesn't feel like it was obvious like 10 years ago, but if you're a stand-up comedian, what do? You go in front of a room of people and you share your thoughts and observations, and you try to keep them entertained, right? And then you try to iterate and hone in on that skill.
yeah,
And I think that like there's a specific context in a club. It's nighttime. There's people, so it's different than a podcast. But that essence of like I'm just gonna riff and talk and kind of keep you entertained is what good podcasts do. It's like you have to come in every day to a podcast, talk about random
tell
topics, make
stories.
it interesting, and
Yeah,
right, make it interesting. And that's the other thing too. That's a good point about stories. Um, so it's not even successful, but just practicing stand-up comedians that have been doing it for years, they have great stories
yeah,
because a couple times a week they're going to clubs,
yeah,
making jokes, being around drunk people, traveling the country,
yeah,
making jokes, being around, so a lot of them do have interesting stories, right?
yeah.
And then every once in a while they'll be in a movie or they'll do like a gig in entertainment. That's also an interesting story, right?
And
So yeah, I think stand-up comedians are like a natural transition into
oh
podcasts.
yeah, because I feel like that goes hand in hand, right? Because like if you're able to tell a story on stand up, then you definitely could tell a good story on podcast. And at least in a podcast format, there's like no pressure. There's like a little bit more relaxed, so you can kind of like, think about certain things and kind of like execute it. You don't have to have like this whole routine because like comedians with
Yeah.
stand up comedians, they're practicing routines like it's like drills. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just seeing what works and they redo it, reiterate and stuff like that.
Yeah, but what's interesting is how many people, I'm not really up on this, so I'm sure there are a couple, but it seems the opposite is hard. And I see a lot of people do the opposite.
Hmm,
I've seen two types of people do the opposite. You start as a podcast, your podcast somehow becomes successful, like
yeah,
you're able to break through, and then they try to almost like, and maybe it's because I think a podcast is real work. I think any form of entertainment is real work. It sometimes doesn't feel like it because it can be casual, conversational, but a lot goes into making a successful
oh
like
man,
hour or a successful 30 minutes, right? But sometimes those hosts may feel like, oh, I should be doing more. So I've seen a lot of them try to do the stand up as like an after thing,
Yeah.
but it's really hard. And I think it's because one, stand up is a lot harder because it takes reps,
Yeah.
right? It's a numbers game and it takes years. And that means for years, you have to go out multiple times and suck, basically bomb and get destroyed while you get better
Yeah.
for little to no money. Or you can go back to your podcast where you're comfortable in an AC room, chilling, and you can like get ad dollars or like sponsorships or whatever. So I haven't seen a lot of people do the transition like backwards. The one that I have seen a couple people pull off though are like the old Vine, like prankster YouTube trend. Some of those
Like,
naturally funny people have been able to transition to stand up a bit.
oh, okay. So like you're talking about like the prank like they do like the social media pranks or just doing funny type of stuff on like, and then they trying to get into stand up. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that actually makes me think of a point that I always express this to a lot of people, especially people that are rap artists, because I feel like rap artists, they confine themselves to just rap, and I'm just like, yo, you gotta understand something. Like, especially now, it's not even about the bars anymore. It's about the personality. It's about the who the person is. So like, don't try to be like, oh, I want to be a rapper and that's it. Why don't you just do podcasts? Why don't you fucking make some videos and content? You know what I'm saying? Like, and if that works better, then just do that, right? Like, look at that kid Case and that. You know what I mean? Like, usually African Americans in that demographic, they tend to just want to go rap. But Case and that was just like, nah, I just want to stream and have fun. And like, which is great because like, it gives other African American kids to be like, oh, hey, I don't have to do some gangster rap shit. I could just do some fun streaming, gaming stuff, and that's more in a positive light, you know, because
What's interesting,
how that
yeah.
goes with like
What's
rapping
interesting,
and how not only that the rap
yeah.
get taken a lot of money from that, but like they don't, it's just a violent. It is a
Well,
violent demographic.
there's a whole there's a whole ecosystem, right? Even if a rapper doesn't matter, like if you're black, white, man, doesn't matter. But if you're in that ecosystem, there's a whole like, yo, when you're gonna come to LA, you have to check in.
Yeah.
When you're gonna go to Atlanta, you have to check in. So there's this whole. We're not even to me. I'm not even thinking about like the music or the content of the music. I'm just thinking about like the system in place.
Yeah.
It's like, who's protecting you? Who are you paying to cover you? Are you Who's making sure that you're like checking in and like, you're kind of paying like,
It's
which
bullshit.
is to me, it's like, yeah, it's similar to what you're talking about. Like, why that could be dangerous because streamers don't have to check in, movie stars don't really have to check in, podcasters are not checking in. Like, we can travel the country and like kind of like be regular, and even famous people can generally travel and be somewhat regular. So this is very, and I don't know if it's the whole music industry. It doesn't seem to be the whole
Mm-hmm.
music industry. It seems to be like a hip hop thing.
Yeah.
I'm also just more familiar with hip hop, so like full disclosure on that. But yeah, like I think you're right where it's like there's a whole system in place, a
Oh
pipeline,
yeah, totally.
in that industry. And if you can skip that and still be successful, still be let your talent shine,
Yeah.
let your ability to entertain shine, it's probably a lot easier. But something that is interesting though that you kind of brought up is, do you think that for every, I think the saying is like for every correction there's an overcorrection.
Yeah.
It's like, when so I think you're right. For a long time, being a rapper was this like big thing, and
That was like the end goal
that
for
was the
everybody.
focus,
Yeah.
right? And because that was the focus, everything around being a rapper was important. And some of the stuff that's around that could be positive, like artist development, right? And making sure like artists know how to perform well, know
Yeah.
how to like do mic work, etc., understand what it means to tour. But what I've noticed is now that it's easier, less effort, to your point, potentially safer to just also transition into being an influencer, it feels like we're seeing this new type of rapper that they're not really interested in rap. They're interested in like maybe having one or two breakouts and then they hard pivot into
Yeah.
like brand deals, sponsorships, influencing, and that's fine. But what I've noticed is uh, the creative part of rap, like touring and going to shows, has seems to have suffered a lot. Where to a lot of like I don't know how common it is, but it seems like a lot of artists now are just like, I got to cancel my shows. I don't really show up, or I show up super late, or I leave early, or I have to cancel shows because no one's buying
Mm.
tickets because I have a history of not
Well,
showing up or coming in late, and it's because that's hard work, and it's way easier to just jump on like a stream,
sure.
right? And they'll say that I've heard people say like, oh, there's just not a lot of money in touring,
No, no,
and
that's
because of the
incorrect.
ticket sales. Well, that's what I was gonna say, because of the ticket
And
sales.
the
But then
merchandise,
you see,
yeah, no, they,
right? But then you see Travis, Beyonce. You see, obviously they're the upper end,
yeah.
but still, like, I would pay to go to
No, no,
concerts, right?
no.
You know what I mean?
So like, just to give you like a brief, like a kind of like a high overview, you at this point in an artist's career, except your two things you want to focus on is either getting brand deals or doing touring. Because there's no way they're making money off of music. Spotify, they all ruined that for the artists already with the with the revenue on that aspect of things.
Yeah.
Nobody's buying CDs no
How
more.
much is a stream? Yeah.
It's so fucking disgusting. It's like it's a fraction of a penny. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna even get into that because that's a really I get really passionate about that, and that's why like I'm anti like streaming. But anyway, but that's like the two end goals. So like, even if you were somewhat like not that great of an artist, or like I'm not saying great in terms of skill, but like not that widely known. There's enough technology out there to know more or less to make calculated risks to be like, okay, this is a good place for us to tour, and like guaranteed these things are the right now that's the end goal for most artists. They need to make those tours because if it's not for that, they're not making money. But adding on to what you were saying earlier, yeah, in the meantime, if you're not making an album, or you don't have the don't have anything to tour, because it's always based off after an album that you created, right? So if you don't have that, yeah, make content, do podcasts, or even get to some Action Bronson level where you have your own TV show where it's like, whether it's food or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying?
He's fully transitioned, right? Because like I don't view Action as a rapper. I view him as like a pure entertainer,
Yeah,
and anything he chooses to do, whether that's music, I'm gonna be
yeah,
entertained
at
by his music,
mm-hmm.
his shows. Yeah, he's like at a level. I just like, this is a renaissance guy.
Yeah, he at this point he has the Midas touch. He could do whatever he want. People are gonna just eat it up. Not taking away anything from him because he actually is a cool, pretty fucking cool guy. But if he was
He
to,
built his world.
yeah,
You know,
if he was staying focused on his music, not saying I liked his rap. I actually enjoy his rap. I actually discovered him really early in the game. But like if he focused just on that, he would have went nowhere with that because his type of music just doesn't go along with the mainstream music, and it's not
he may have
profitable.
had a bump. Yeah, he may have had a bump because there was this like moment in time.
Yeah,
It may have fizzled a bit, but there was a moment in time. This is like years. You're right though. He would have went years
yeah,
with like, you're right, like nowhere near the success he has now. But there was a moment in time with like the Griselda wave where I think he could have had like that sound
oh
was just
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit more in like the forefront, and he could have maybe found a pocket and like that kind of like, even though his content is very different than
yeah,
the Griselda sound, it's still that same like somewhat gritty New York feel. That like New York State, New York
yeah,
City feel. I know they're from Buffalo, but still, it's that feel.
yeah,
So it was like a moment there where like he could have maybe gotten a bump, but you're right that like there's no way he would have broken through
yeah,
and been as successful as a guy that has his own show that was on Vice and now he owns completely.
yeah.
He's making olive
He's so yeah.
oil.
He has
He's
his own
co-branded.
merchandising
Yeah,
brand, and then he got brand
yeah.
deals, and then he had the brand deal with New Balance, which that's gonna just get him into the door for more fucking
Yeah.
brand deals. And going back to my touring point, even if he was to just stick to music, you'd be surprised how even such a small level of like where his audience for his music, he would still be able to tour and make a good amount of money. Not like the weekend type level money, but enough to like, oh, this is worth. I could make if I do this one tour, I'll have my yearly salary done in 1 year. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah, I
it's
could definitely see a like high six figure,
yeah,
even breaking into seven figure. Like, probably you can get a good high six figure going with like a good tour.
bro.
He's had a couple of hits in the past, and then easily break into the low seven figures if you time like a good album release, and maybe you just catch, doesn't have to be a number one, but you just catch a good hit, a good wave on, and then
Lois,
people come out.
if I even made 50,000 for 3 months straight, if I had to bust my ass for 3 months traveling across the country for 50,000, after all paid stuff, like like my team and all that, bro, I would definitely do that. You crazy? You know what I'm saying? Like that's better than my situation
Yeah.
right now. So it's like, and then like if you have a fan base, that's very attainable, But again, that's a business that you have to know, like have really good management and all that. But I'm just I'm just illustrating that even for a small time artist, that's really really good money. But going back to the whole thing though, uh, I think that's the beauty of it though, because he's able to not change and sell out his rap music. He could still make that hip hop music that he loves, that he knows well, instead of making all these A sides kind of like mainstream. Like he doesn't have to go and make an Action Bronson drill song. You know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't need to do that. You know what I'm saying? Whereas,
Well, that's the power of creating a brand
right,
that penetrates across podcasts, merch,
right,
appearances, shows, whatever he does. You're The people that follow him know who he is, and they're expecting that,
yeah,
and it works because you're right. Like maybe he takes a hit by not changing his sound in rap, which is to preserve his artistic
yeah,
integrity, like his vision for what he wants. Maybe he takes a hit there, but then he makes that up with the show, or he
yeah,
makes it up with. I remember this was a couple years ago in New York. I forgot the name. I think it was like Morgenstein or something like that. It was like an ice cream shop around like the Lower East Side. But I remember I was just walking with my wife uh, down the street, and we just saw that like he had a partnership with the ice cream shop
yeah,
there. And he had like his own like ice cream with his own olive. It
right,
was like
right,
its own twist on it, right? Super cool, right? But it's just like, because he has a following, because he has a brand, because he has an artistic vision that he didn't want to sacrifice, it cultivated a certain feel and audience. And now he can do these partnerships, and his fans are going to come out and buy that Action Bronson ice cream, or that Action Bronson shirt, or that Action Bronson, whatever.
And you know what? And that's and it this wraps up my whole point about this whole conversation of this. That's why I was telling rappers that, but I tell everybody now this. Don't constrain yourself to one thing. Like me as me, right? Like if there's anything that I do in this realm, I do DJing, right? I try to do shows, I try to fucking, like I'm trying to like pursue like radio station guests, like all types of music stuff, right? But it's just like, all right, well, I could try to just do that, but then I know what it comes to be a successful DJ. How about I just maybe I'll work towards that, but in the meantime, let me make some content. You know what I mean? Let me show my personality. Let me show what my, like you said, the key word, branding. What is my brand as a DJ, right? Like you could see me play shows all the time, but you'll never get to know who I am as a person, right? So like this is another good outlet to just kind of like feed everything into this one thing to get your ROI, so to speak.
Yeah, it feels like it's the digital suit, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I'm using suit loosely, but 20 years ago, if I were Jordan ones, a 3X white tee, walking down the heights, it signaled that I was part of a certain culture, right?
yeah,
If you wore a suit and you were walking down the street, on 34 or in Soho or whatever, it signaled that you were part of a certain tribe,
yeah,
right? And like maybe that wasn't, you don't, yes, there's that saying, don't judge a book by its cover and all that stuff, but generally, how we dress, the suit that we wear, does signal like a little bit of the kind of tribe that we
yeah.
prescribe to. And like that's a great thing. And I think when I hear you talk about content and stuff, and just like diversifying putting stuff out there. I think about that as a digital suit. You're sort of signaling like this is the kind of stuff that I think about, how I view stuff, and if you're part of that community, if you want to subscribe to this world or you're part of this world, you can come and chop it up with me. Follow me, hit me up,
Right.
view my stuff, whatever. It's that equivalent, but for the digital world. Because
Yeah.
if you just go to my page and you see nothing, then there's nothing there.
Right.
But if you see, and let's say I talk about coding and I'm posting about coding, you're like, you know what? I'm thinking about a career in coding. All right, maybe I should follow this guy.
Yeah.
Right? It's just signals to like build your tribe.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with like being part of a larger tribe. Like I was saying, like if I post about coding, there's a larger coding tribe in the world, and I'm like a pocket of that, and you can be part of my pocket. And then, but I think the people that really break through in crazy ways are people that create their own tribe, where they're like, you know, I think Action Bronson's an example of that.
Yeah.
He's his own tribe.
Yeah.
He's not rapper Bronson, it's Bronson who raps, you know? He's not above rap,
Yeah.
he's just one person, but you don't just go to him and you'll be like, oh, this is another rapper.
Yeah.
He created his own tribe,
Yeah.
right? Around the stuff that he cares about. Cooking, entertainment, rap, travel.
Some fly sneakers. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
about
And just,
the,
like,
and then like just New York
hilarious
culture.
shit talking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he's, yeah.
That's that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, you know, and that's funny thing that we were talking about this because I just thought about it. You know, my brother was here I think like a month ago. He came here for like a vacation. But I asked him, I'm like, yo, please, can we do a podcast episode? Because my brother have stories for days. And he was just like, oh shit, man, I don't know, man, because I might some of the stories I tell, it's gonna be some of my homies that don't want to, they don't want to reveal that story and shit. I'm like, bro, you don't gotta say no names.
We don't have to say no names or even talk about no stories. But I used to remember when we lived together, and he would tell me some of those stories, and I'll never forget. But he had I don't know if it was a best friend, but he had a friend who was just like a wild boy.
Oh, I already know. Yeah, no, me and him talked about it because I already know exactly who you're talking about. And yo, and like, you know what's funny? That dude, the guy you just mentioned, him himself probably has like 100 stories on, but I'm not gonna even get into that. That's something later on, but
that's because, you know, I grew up, you're a little bit older than me, and your brother's a little bit older than you, but I grew up in the tailwind of that 90s. Probably more 2000s was like my core, but I grew up in like that tail end of the 90s and like that New York scene. And
the 9/11 era.
Yeah,
No, I'm just saying, like, that's like the 2009 11 era. That was our time, you know?
Yeah, and you probably have a little bit more exposure to the 90s, of course.
Yeah.
You could probably even get off like being a pure 90s kid because you're a little bit older. But your brother was like the tail end of the 80s. And the pure 90s era. So I just think, you know, if you know anything about New York, you know a little bit about New York culture or even hip hop culture, you already know what it was, right?
Yeah.
Like late 80s, 90s era, it was just a wild time for anyone.
Yeah, and like if I could just get him to like remember like at least what it was New York City when he was like 15, you know what I'm saying? I already know like some of the things he would discuss, but like yeah, he has a lot of, and that's another thing too, it just makes it more interesting because how many motherfucking Japanese kids that was born in New York City that are like us, you know what I'm saying? Like that in itself is just like, what the fuck is going on, you know what I'm saying? So like, but again, that's something else.
Yeah, running through that era of Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to get him onto to do that because I think there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about. But yeah,
I think it'd be super. Yeah, I think it'd be super interesting to just hear your brother just chop it up about just random stuff. Yeah. I bet you he doesn't even like. It's so part of his life that I bet he doesn't even have like a story to tell. You just have to talk to him and it'll just start coming out.
Exactly. No.
It's like it's because in his brain it's like that was just regular life. Like nothing stands out as weird. You know what I mean?
And you know, I'm very grateful because like, you know, growing up in New York City or growing up in my life, it was pretty like, you know, like the family was, it was a little rough, you know what I'm saying? Like we were all over the place. Like I was living with my brother, I lived with my mother was living with my brother, you know, like it was just like a really big mess. And then like, so like it, in the beginning it was pretty rough, but like now like our relationship is like we have such good chemistry, like we just talk shit, and then like we're just like we just have a really funny weird conversation, but in like a really New York way, which is fucking hilarious. Because like, you know, I've been living here in Japan, and I'm just like trying to learn the language and stuff, so like I don't really get to communicate, and I don't get to communicate like who I believe who I truly am as a New Yorker. You know, I don't get to talk the shit that I like to talk, right? So when he came, it just all came out. Like we were just talking, going back and forth, and we were just like, you know, talking shit and just saying the same shit that we always say. So it was really nice to get to that. But yeah, let's kind of change gears a little bit real quick before we get to the next thing. Let me tell you the Bobby Lee story that I wanted to tell you.
Yeah.
So it's a very short story, but it was hilarious because like the way it just went down. So like it was me and my a girl that I was dating at the time. I believe it was like before, it was after COVID, I believe. I think it was still like when we were just like getting back, you know what I'm saying? Like getting back to like, you know, from lockdowns. So I think we were like we were in Williamsburg, probably just on a date or whatever. And then we were just walking around, and then like we end up onto a corner, and then like I look across, I'm like, and I just see this Asian dude, and I'm just like, why you look familiar? I'm like, that's Bobby Lee. So Bobby Lee was just standing there. It's like he was just across the street. And I'm not like, there are probably like, I would count my hands 5 people in the world that I would actually be starstruck and I would have to have a conversation. Unfortunately, no shade to Bobby Lee, but Bobby Lee's not one of them. I don't care if I see Bobby Lee on the street. He's great. I love him. He's funny as hell, but like I'm gonna leave him alone. I'm not gonna bother him, right? So I'm like looking at him. I'm like, oh shit, that is Bobby, and I'm like laughing by myself. And then, you know, the girl that I was dating at the time, you know, we laugh. We have like the same level of humor. So like. So I see her like seeing him, and I'm just like, oh shit. And then like I guess she caught it too. So then after we walked past, I was like, and then I told my girl like, yo, that was Bobby Lee, right? She was like, yeah, that was Bobby Lee. You know what he was doing? And I was like, what? He was just grilling me. I was just like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, he just gave me a mean look. And I was like he's staring at you basically he was staring at her like she did something to him. You know what I'm saying? And I think what happened is that Bobby kind of got the hint that we recognized him. So he kind of like prepared himself. And maybe, I guess he didn't know what face he had, but he prepared himself like, oh shit, these people are going to harass me right now. Well, so that's why he like grilled my girl.
He always has stories on his podcast about like, actually, there's a clip. I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah. But there's a clip recently, like in the last couple months, of him specifically talking about. I think he had like Andrew Schultz on his podcast, and they're talking about just New York City in general. And he was talking about specifically about how being recognized in New York is like one of the places he hates to be recognized the most.
You see, I knew it.
Yeah, so it's funny because as you were saying that clip, I don't remember the details, but I think it's something about how New Yorkers are just a little bit more like, I think
just in your face.
I don't remember, so I'm probably fucking it up, but like in other states, they'll be like, "Oh wow, are you Bobby Lee?" Right?
Yeah.
But in New York, he goes like, his most famous skit was like a skit of him like being like Down syndrome.
Oh my god.
So in New York City, people goes like, "Hey, aren't you that fucking retard?" Like some shit like that. And he goes like, it drives him fucking crazy.
Like out of all things to say to somebody, oh, you were that retard. Like I'm off to censor that.
TV, right?
Yeah. And you know,
which is a very New York thing. Like I can definitely see some like construction
Yeah,
worker, like
and
some like Long Island motherfucker, be like,
super
"Hey, aren't
loud.
you that motherfucker?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
super loud, like in their face, like not even trying to approach it nicely, like, oh yeah, you're the fucking guy, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like just
yeah,
going crazy,
yeah.
like, yeah. So like,
Where like any other state, they'll be nice and like, "Oh, are you that celebrity?" And like
yeah,
in New York, they're like, "Hey," and then if he grills them, the New like such New York culture, be like, "Well, fuck you then." You know what
yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
They'll do exactly what you said,
Yeah,
right? Because the first thing you said goes like, "I'm not gonna get fucking starstruck by Bobby Lee." Like
yeah,
they'll be that's the exact attitude that
yeah,
every New Yorker
yeah. You know what I
has,
mean?
and then yeah,
It's like
and
fuck
then
out of
he
here.
feels
I don't give a shit about you,
yeah.
bro.
Well, and that's the thing. Like if you listen to his podcast, one of his insecurities, which may be silly, but it's like it's how he
It's just
is
insecurity.
that it's like he feels like he's been an entertainer and a star for a long time, and he does get a little butthurt when like people don't necessarily treat him like how they would treat other celebrities that have been
Ah,
around for a long time. So he does get a little bit of like you should maybe be like, oh shit, I'm Star Trek.
yeah,
That's Barbie.
yeah, yeah,
That's Bobby Lee.
yeah,
And he
yeah.
kind of feels a way about that, which is silly, but he's kind of a silly dude at the end of the day.
Well,
So that's like his thing.
yeah, I mean, for the record, I mean, I'll give him this much. Bobby been in the game for a very very long time. He's
And he's
probably
been funny for a long
and
time.
he's probably one of the most craziest Asian motherfuckers out there. And he's been on Mad TV, and he was like the Asian dude. So he definitely is a legend. For that. You know what I mean? He's just a nutty guy. Like there's no like fuck all that Asian shit. Like he's just fucking crazy, bro. Like if you really hear his stories and some of the stuff he was saying, and then like he's just like really open about doing just hard drugs. Like yeah, he's just a fucking nutbag. You know what I mean? But
He's to me, I think he is pure comedy.
yeah,
He's a funny human being.
yeah,
Uh, and he's to your point, he's lived through some hard stuff.
yeah,
He's also done some amazing stuff, but all of that, like his way of taking all of that and sharing it or expressing it or his outlet is through by making it funny.
yeah,
uh like for sure, like I don't think anyone can take away. I mean, to your point, how many it's like a longevity thing, right? Like we even see that in rap where uh certain rappers don't get, like I'll say Fabulous, like, and we're from New York, we probably index towards giving him his flowers, but
mm,
probably doesn't get as much flowers as he could or should, whatever. That's not my point. My point is just like Fab came out in the late '90s, and he'll still drop music now.
yeah,
Like just the longevity of it is a really, even if you're not number one, or even if you're not even close to number one, it's still impressive
for
to like
sure.
be able to still create in a way that people want 20 years later. And that's how I feel about Bobby Lee too. He may never be like a Dave Chappelle or a Bill Burr. Like he may never be that. That's fine. It's still fucking impressive that you can go 20 years strong
Yeah,
of putting out funny stuff and still be funny 20 years later. You know,
and
I haven't done anything in my life I'm only 30. I haven't done anything in my life for 20 years. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, that's true. I mean, there's definitely some, you got to get some kind of recognition for that, especially because like, you could tell he's a lot more successful now. I feel like he's making much more money now, and he's like good with
It's
he's
so
very
easy
successful
to
with the podcast.
yeah. And it's so easy to just flip flop now to doing different things. Like
Yeah,
people can change stuff easily because information is more accessible. So for someone to be like, yeah, I could do this, I could do that, but I'm still choosing to go, in his case, do stand up,
yeah,
even though I don't have to, but
yeah,
because I've already proven that I can do it. But he still chooses to keep going and keep doing it. There's just some like you can tell he's authentic to the craft,
yeah,
regardless if you like it or not. Like you can tell he's about that life. And I think to me, that's always impressive when there's someone's like, I'm just gonna keep, like, I think Rogan's an example. I know he's controversial, but he still does stand up.
yeah,
He does not need to do stand up. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like he's good off the pod money, right?
yeah,
But the fact that he'll still go out and do shows, I just always find people like that interesting. I think it's similar to you too, man. Like you moved to Japan, you're starting to work, you're leaning into the boxing stuff, and you'll still go live and do like DJ sets, right? So it's like you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
That's not a big part of I mean, it's a big part of who you are, but it's not like the thing that's paying the bills right now or
Right,
the thing
right.
that like people will tell you. So the fact that you still show up for that, I think just talks about how you are passionate about that part of the craft.
I think that's what, at some level, I think that's what, that's what keeps you sane, I feel like, right? Because like I feel
Right.
like um I'll talk about this a little bit, like with my DJ, and I kind of gave up the whole idea of like becoming a big time, like, you know, nationwide, countrywide touring DJ and stuff like that, because I understood over time that there are things like I need to learn how to make music, I need to have connections. Like there's just a lot of stuff that comes with it. And one of the biggest things that I just don't like doing, and I came to, terms with it, is being a very cloudy, um clicky person. You know what I'm saying? Like really just being with the cool people and like really just kind of like, just dick riding and shit like that, and like just I'm just not about
Yeah.
that. Like
It's
I'm not
it's a really
about
great
yeah, I'm not about like just trying to be with people that I really just don't care about, just for
you
just for some fucking fame.
you're touching on how I feel about uh a lot of stuff that people tell me that I should start making content on.
You know.
Because I think I have a similar take on it where, first, before I say my take, I just want to also mention that, like, you're absolutely right. I'll use DJing as an example. There's a key difference between I want to DJ and I want to make money DJing.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
sound similar. They sound similar, but the I want to make
Totally
money
different.
part changes the dynamic
Hmm.
completely, right? And like you have to be very honest with yourself about what do you want. I will say we do live in an era that's been better than ever before for you to be able to just focus on, let's say, DJing
Yeah,
and still find a way of monetizing it. It's what we're talking about, creating content, brand deals. It's that Action Bronson approach of like
exactly.
he doesn't have to sacrifice his craft. So it is possible now.
Yeah,
It is harder, or it's still hard to do, don't get me wrong, but that didn't even exist 10 years ago when
yeah.
me and you like first became friends, right? Like that's a very new thing that very like a new generation of consumers that grew up in the digital space are able to really like tap into and understand.
And
So that yeah.
no, real quick, I might to interrupt you, but I wanted to add this real quick before I forget this. But this is why it's a really actually interesting thing, because yeah, this is actually part of the reason why I'm doing content creation, because I wanted to eventually tie back to DJing, but I could be focusing making content, and if I'm doing well, I have a better chance doing well. I have a more I have a better chance of doing well making content than trying to learn and make music that might that would I would get people to like my music. The chances of me making
Yeah.
music and being good at making music and then having people actually liking my music versus me making cool content. I feel like making cool content has so much better of a option for me and open way more
That's a good
doors
point.
than make me
Yeah,
focusing on making music, because like who knows, maybe my music would fucking doesn't really appeal to anybody, right?
no, that's a good point. Like I said, that it's still really hard to like do that,
Yeah,
make content center, right? But you're right. Compared to the alternative, if you're looking at like I want to break through the music
yeah,
industry, and be like an artist, it's actually not as hard,
yeah,
right? Like if you're comparing it to that
right.
specifically. Yeah, that's a really good point. And to your other point about like not wanting to play that game, just not being as interested in having to accept that.
Yeah,
That's how I kind of feel about for myself as well. I get a lot of people that ask me, you should make content about wellness, about productivity, about mindset, about growth mindset specifically, and like how to think through stuff and like
mm,
how to like act with intention. And I never really make content around that kind of for a couple reasons. But that is one of those reasons where it's like, I really value that part of my identity and the amount of work that goes into understanding and thinking through and being philosophical. I also really value when someone comes in front of me with a situation and my wisdom or my insight can maybe point them in a direction
All
that
right.
can maybe help them out. Like that's a very like precious experience for me. And I'm not saying like making content devalues that, but what I do notice is part of making content is consistency and frequency.
Yep.
And what I've noticed specific for this like craft, at least for me, um, you have to an extent water down some of that wisdom or knowledge because you're trying to hit a consistency and frequency quota, right? So eventually you just run out of interesting or insightful, nuanced things
No.
to say because you're like, I have to say it often. I have to say it often, say it frequently, and cut it down to a unit of time that's extremely
That's
digestible.
so
And
that's
that's
yeah. That's exactly what I
that.
wanted to add to that because I feel like the challenge that I face right now with making some of the content right now. I want to like make a clip that's 30 seconds, but it's like, oh shit, I can't even find a part in this whole 2 hour podcast where I could just have one shot clip of us saying something that would be value. Like we would have to like really. I feel like some of these podcasters or some of these people that make content already have some lines set up just to be like, oh, we're gonna just say this one part. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just gonna be in a highlight clip. You know what I mean? Because there's no way. Like we're me and you go back and forth saying some really interesting like we're really going in depth with things, right? But we're free flowing, so like we can't fit this all in like 10 seconds, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right because I don't know how other productions do their
Yeah.
podcasts, but it came out. Who who are those two? They're kind of shitty people. The the prince and his wife. I don't know their name.
Wait,
They
the
like got
Prince?
kicked out of. Yeah, they got kicked out of England
Oh,
because he
okay.
wanted
Oh,
to
yeah,
date
yeah, yeah,
her.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't know they were shitty, but yeah. But what about them?
Yeah, they're kind of like they're kind of shitty people,
Okay.
but they got for like a whole bunch of reasons,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
they got. I mean, and to be fair, the queen and the kingdom, like they're all like it's
Yeah, yeah,
all shitty people,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's not they're shitty and they're not like no, they're all kind of like terrible,
Yeah.
because they're like rich and famous for just being born, and I think that probably does something to
Oh, yeah.
your entitlement. You know what I mean?
I mean, look at child
But
actors that are adults now.
yeah, yeah. Now imagine if like you didn't even have to act; you were
Yeah.
just born,
Born.
and because of that,
People,
you know what I mean?
people
And
just
so
treat you like you fucking special when you didn't do shit.
you didn't do nothing, and yeah, like you get to hang out with presidents and the most famous people in the world just
Yeah,
because, right? And it's
yeah,
like, yeah, so it just creates this like culture probably
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
awful. But to that point though, with them specifically, they got like a Spotify deal to create a podcast,
Oh my
a
god.
couple podcasts. This is like a couple years ago or like a year ago, and I think it was like high seven figures,
Yeah.
right? Like there was a lot of money, and they didn't produce shit. And then Spotify just like canceled the deal like a
Yeah.
couple years later because they just didn't make any content. Then it came out, they only put out like 2 or 3 episodes.
Oh my
But this is the
god.
part to your point about like the
Nepo
clipping and
babies.
stuff. It turned out that they would invite guests to do a podcast,
Yeah.
and a couple times they weren't even in the studio.
Yeah.
The guests would come and they weren't even there. Their production team would ask the guests questions and the guests would answer. And then in post production,
I knew
they
it.
would come and add themselves as if they were the
Oh
ones
my
asking.
god.
So there would never even be a
Oh
conversation
my
about something.
god.
It's almost like if I recorded like questions you asked me,
Yeah.
and then you just talk pretending that you're inserted there. And yeah, if you do that, then you're right. You get all the clips, you get the structure,
Yeah.
and you create the feeling of authenticity.
See.
But is bullshit. But what's crazy to me and why I say they're shitty is like to be honest with you, there's probably a lot of podcasts that do that,
Yeah.
a lot of shows that do that. They could they still didn't do the you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
at least they're still there. Yeah, they in the studio.
like they didn't even show up. They only made like 2 episodes in this already lazy format. They didn't even do that. So
already
like
already a
they're extra shitty.
just
Like
just
they're
some
doing something shitty and they're yeah.
just some real nepo baby shit for real, like just not giving a fuck, like, oh, our lives are so hard. You know what I mean? Like, this is such hard work.
Yeah, no, they've done
Yeah, but
a lot of scheming to make money to not really have to do
do
anything.
anything.
It's
um
it's impressive if
yeah,
you can pull it off. Like, God bless, but it
but
couldn't be me.
going back to your point though, I totally understand where you're coming from, how it waters down, you know, what you're trying to do, and like it's almost like really, yeah, like I think the word here is unauthentic. It's not really your authentic, you know,
And I
thinking,
think
right?
there
It's
are
all
people,
curated.
yeah, and I do think that like, because I think this is important for some people to understand if they're listening to this too. I do think that there's a generation of there's a version of me
Yeah,
that's younger, right? It's like this kid somewhere in the world. There's probably a lot of them, right? That have a similar way of viewing and thinking and appreciation for this, and they grew up in an environment where people are posting often, frequently, and in like these soundbite, and their brain already thinks in this way,
yeah,
and they already communicate in this way, and it could be authentic for them to express themselves in this
right.
way. And like that's not how my muscle developed. So for me, it is a little inauthentic. Where I think the authentic way for how I view things to come out, whether that makes sense in the market or not, we're not
Yeah,
talking about what's marketable. We're talking about what's authentic, is by having conversations like this where someone can show me a real thing that's happening and I can share my real thoughts on it. And if someone listens to it, that might be valuable to them. Because that's how this muscle developed for me.
yeah,
This is me and you post rave on the train chopping it up, right? This is me, you doing those long drives when you used to drop me off in the Heights after being broken, whatever, chopping it up. This is me and Vic jumping on a phone call, after not talking for a bit,
yeah,
chopping it up. Which is like this muscle was born by me just chopping it up, which is a very like New York thing. Like you just kind of chop it up,
yeah,
walk around, talk shit or whatever. So my muscle in this area wasn't built in like thinking in 10-second sound bites.
yeah,
And that's why it's inauthentic for me to do that.
yeah,
And I'm just not interested in like, I tell people like, I think it's kind of cool, but I tell people like, I'm more like the fucking wandering samurai.
yeah.
If you want some of my wisdom, then see me when you see me. Like, I'm not here to like go to the arena and
Or
challenge people on it. I'm more like,
you
hey,
see me by the
if I'm at
river
it,
eating a fucking cheeseburger, and yeah, sit by me. I'll
walk
have a
up to me
conversation.
and I'll have a conversation with you
Yeah,
and I'll split some knowledge with you.
yeah,
Like, and that's okay though, because like I've diversified my income, my wealth, my success in
yeah,
a whole bunch of other areas that I don't, that can be my pure thing.
yeah,
And I could express it in the ways that I like. I don't have to necessarily, and to be honest with you, I prefer that. Like, I love the idea of like, I'm just a dude chilling and then maybe we have a random conversation at a networking event,
yeah,
during like a business meeting, just by hanging out with some homies or whatever, and then we get into these really like cool conversations that cool stuff comes out of. And you're right, every once in a while it could be recorded on a pod. That's fine with me too. But I like that it all just comes out naturally versus like I'm not sitting down and being like, tomorrow I'm going to talk about the importance of journaling,
yeah.
and then I'm going to talk about this. It's like I
Right,
just let it
right.
kind of flow.
And it's funny when you're talking like this and like you're explaining this. The only person I could think of is Rick Rubin. Like this guy, Rick Rubin doesn't really have a job title if you think about it. He just kind of just be in the studio and just gives feedback and advice to artists, and then that's his job. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not like he has this like structure or like this kind of formula that he has. He kind of just sits there with you there and just be like, oh yeah, let's, like, he's like eating stuff.
He's
And
just like
yeah,
the ultimate like
music
vibe
guru. Yeah,
curator
yeah,
in a
exactly.
way.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, you know
just,
what I mean?
yeah, so it's just
Yeah.
like, so like in that
It's
sense,
funny
it's like the
because
same thing right there.
yeah, and I just got his book recently, and it's on my list of like next book
Yeah,
to read. because there is something I've always thought about that, because when I've heard him talk,
Yeah.
and I wonder if he talks about it in his book or in a podcast or something. But it's something I've experienced, and I think he probably experienced early on. Not anymore, because he's a fucking legend.
Yeah.
But I've had people uh, come to me and want to partner with me in business,
Yeah.
and in stuff. And sometimes it's very strategic. You're a software engineer. I want a software engineer. I'll pay you, or we can do a partnership.
Right.
But a lot of times, or sometimes, it's not that at all. And I
Yeah.
think it's very like Rick Rubin, like where it's like, though I've heard people tell me, I don't know how to explain to other people what you bring or what you do. Like
Mm-hmm.
there isn't like a title I can think of, but when you're part of the process of thinking through an idea, thinking through the reasons around it, and even just thinking about how we execute, it ends up being significantly better than if you're not in the room.
Yeah.
So it's like there isn't like a specific. It's easy to put people in a box and be like, that's the producer, that's the designer, that's the engineer. But I think more wisdomy, or more like people that care about like thinking through stuff and like kind of going through that conversation.
Mm.
If I were to put myself in that category, there isn't one thing that I do well. I'm good at the process,
Yeah.
and I'm good at switching my hats
Right.
to understand what hat needs to be worn. That might be, if it's me and you talking about business, that might be me asking you the right questions to help your creativity moving. It might be me asking the right questions to think about the structure of the deal.
Right.
And on the flip side, it may be me actually going out and executing and doing some of that stuff too, because I'm also an executor, So I always wonder, like with Rick Rubin, like how he early on was able to describe to artists or like executives at a music industry, like what he does.
Yeah.
Because it's a weird thing where he's like, I just kind of show up and eat and hang out.
Yeah.
And they're like, and we're paying you how much for that?
Yeah.
But when he doesn't do it, there's no hits.
Yeah.
But when he does it, there's hits.
There's results.
It's
like there's
weird.
clear. There's clear results. It's not like he's just like some pseudoscientific like guru. He's actually doing something. That's actually, I'm glad that you kind of going into this direction, because that's actually some of the things I wanted to ask you today is some of the companies that you work with, and like also like just some tech stuff. And then like I also actually want to talk a little bit, I don't know if you're allowed to, but like when you were working with the NFT company, I actually kind of want to talk about crypto a little bit. But I guess what
Yeah, ask away, man.
Okay, cool. The first thing I wanted to ask was like, let's just say you're an interviewer for a company. What are like the key things that you look for in a candidate? Like forget about this. Like, of course, skills are important, but like when you see somebody approach and how they talk and how they like present themselves, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's important is to understand, like when I say what role you're going into, I don't necessarily mean the like technical expectation. Yeah. I think about two aspects. I think about the seniority of the role. Does it skew closer to starting your career or closer to like leadership seniority? I think that's the first thing you have to think about if I was an interviewee. Yeah. And even as an interviewer, that's the first thing I ask. Like, am I hiring someone that's going to be my peer or senior? Or am I going to hire someone that's going to be someone that's more junior and I'll probably have to mentor, right? I think that's the first thing you have to look for in a role. The second thing is, what is the size of this company? And I'll use two extremes. Okay. Seed, early funded startup, 10 people, or giant enterprise with thousands and thousands of employees. Companies have been around for like 200 years, right? Yeah. We'll use those two extremes. So on a personal level, are you more junior? Are you more senior? At a company level, is this like a newer company or a very, very mature late stage company? I think those are the two most important key things you have to consider, because those two factors and where they fall change how you should approach the culture aspect of your interview. Again, you still need whatever the technical expectations are, you need to have. But from the culture side, let's just pick one, because it'll help cement my like thinking.
Yep.
So let's say you are a junior person at a more enterprise company, right? So you're starting off your career, or you're a few years in your career, but you want to go work for American Express, like a
Yep.
company that I've worked for before, right? Um, in that position, this is why like how it all comes together. In that position, when I'm thinking about, the enterprise, I think to myself, okay, well, in an enterprise team, there is more structure, there's more support systems typically, um, and there's more like fully functionally defined teams. Like engineers typically are engineers,
Yep.
designers are typically designers, product people are typically product people. Because of that structure,
Oh shit.
and that like the role that you'll have will be very well defined,
Yep.
more or less pretty well defined, and you should be able to speak to that role very, very confidently. So if I'm coming in as a junior engineer, I think it's really important that you're able to speak to like your interest on engineering, how you want to go deeper in engineering, how if you're doing engineering on the front end, you like thinking about like front ends
Right.
and clients and stuff. And uh, from the junior perspective, so that's because it's an enterprise and things tend to be
Yeah.
very well defined. And then from the junior perspective, it's because what people look for in a junior, in my opinion, is this person someone that I want to help grow? Do I want to spend the time to help develop this person? Because if I hire you for my team,
Yeah.
then I'm going to have to invest in you to get to a certain skill level where you
Right.
can be independent,
That makes
right?
sense.
So I think you optimize for relatability,
Yep.
for culture, for enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Like I'm interested in learning. I know learning is hard, but like it's also fun and rewarding.
Right.
I know, I have the aptitude to learn quickly. So if you show me something once or twice, I'll be able to pick it up. I know how to ask questions the right way. There's a difference between I'm stuck, but I've tried these things and they didn't work. Can you maybe help me think about this in a way that I haven't tried yet?
Right.
There's ways of asking questions, there's ways of reaching out, there's ways of like viewing something frustrating and turning it into something exciting,
Yeah.
right? Because like, people always say that, and there's truth to it. Like, not knowing is an opportunity for learning, right? So it's
Right.
not, it's a growth opportunity. So if I have a junior engineer, I know already that they're not going to know everything and they're going to need some help at some point.
Yeah.
Everyone needs help at some point, but like I know already that as a junior you're going to need nurturing and growing.
Right.
So if you can convince me that that's going to be a fun and exciting process for you, and you're going to be like really enthusiastic to get better, that's going to make me enthusiastic to teach you, right?
True.
So in an enterprise environment, I know that I have a lot of certainty that the job that I'm applying for is going to be probably well structured and defined and insulated from other parts of the business. That's key, and I'll tell you why in the opposite. But like that, so you know that you can speak towards your interest in going deep in that area, and then you want to give off a sense of optimism, excitement, and a willingness to learn. Because when you hire a junior, you're hiring them understanding that they'll need to upskill.
Yeah.
And it's really a question of, do I want to help this person upskill?
Yeah.
Do I want to be, even if you're interviewing, does this person in front of you, if they're going to be the one in your team, hopefully you're interviewing with the people that you get to work with,
Yeah.
you get to say, do I want to learn from this person?
Yeah.
Do I feel uncomfortable from this person? If I feel uncomfortable now, it's going to be uncomfortable to ask them for help.
Yeah.
So that's something you want to be thinking about. So, and I'll flip this now.
Yeah.
If you're a senior engineer
Mm-hmm.
and you want to interview for a startup, let's kind of like flip it on its head. Here's how I would think about that interview process. If you're a senior, now you're skewing from needing certain, like demonstrating a willingness to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and now you have to start skewing for demonstrating a willingness to lead. Now coming as a senior from a personal level, you don't necessarily want to convey a sense of it's still good to have because it's just like a good trait, but you don't want to spend too much time saying, I don't know how to do stuff, but I'm so excited to learn and grow, and I learn and grow quickly.
Right.
You want to start speaking from a position of leadership where it's like, I've been through uncertainty, and here's a key. I'm saying the same thing, but here's like a key difference. Junior says, I don't know how to do that, but I'm so willing to learn, and I'm willing to like work with the team to upscale
Enthusiasm.
and
Yeah.
level myself up, right? And then if you're a senior and you don't know the thing, the language turns to, I've been in situations of uncertainty and I know how to ask the right questions
Yep.
to bring myself to a place of certainty, right? And it's just like, you're even in that statement, you're saying, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I know how to know. Very similar to the junior, but I
The
think the
mindset's
key
different.
distinction is
Yeah.
the mindset's different. And I think one of the key differences, how autonomous are you? Like, I can, at this point in my career, know or recognize that I don't know something, and I know what steps to take in my communication and in my personal work on how to get an answer. I don't need a more senior person to
To
show me how to
guide
do
you how to
something.
get the solution. Right.
At best, they can point me at like a resource
Yeah.
and I can go deeper in
Into
that
that.
resource. Also, as a senior person, I can spot it a mile away. As a senior person, I could hear the business say, we're gonna do we're gonna pay a provider to give us data
Yeah.
that we want to use in charts and graphs. Like, and business says that as an upcoming goal.
Yeah.
At that moment, as a senior, you start to pick up things like, I'm not familiar with the right way of storing data that needs to be accessible quickly for charting and graph. I'm not familiar with how to do renderings
Yeah.
on the web for charts and graph. Let me start now doing a little bit of research so I can have an informed opinion as that work gets closer. So when I'm looking for from a senior, is someone who understands how to navigate and
Yeah.
deal with uncertainty, uh, and someone who understands the balance of saying no.
Yeah.
Like having examples of like as a senior of how to manage your time and how to manage your priorities, and that usually means saying no to one thing in an effective way so that you can say yes to the work that really matters.
Yeah.
Super important. As a junior, you don't really have or are expected to have that level of discernment,
Yeah.
right? And now that's like the senior, but let's say a senior at a startup. The difference between like the enterprise and the startup is, we're at the startup, sorry, at the enterprise, you're thinking structure, define boundaries, define goals. At the startup, it's the opposite. It's unstructured, undefined. Everyone wears many hats and everyone's part of the conversation. So
This is
I
startup.
think if you're,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
startup is like that.
Yeah.
Because of like the fuzziness of a startup,
Right.
trying to figure things out. There's a lot of like, there's no clear boundaries. Everyone who's capable kind of could wear any hat,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't mean that like you got hired as an engineer and now you're going to be doing accountant. Like, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But what I mean is like, you get hired as an engineer and you may have to go into Figma and like make some design
designs.
edits
Yeah.
if it makes sense,
Yeah.
right? Or like you may have to like have more of a product conversation. You have more, and that's a good thing. It gives you more input into the entire process. That means your voice has a higher chance of being heard. It means you have a higher chance of impacting the business in a positive way. It gives you a faster learning loop.
Yeah.
It forces you to develop some boundaries for yourself on like, how do you manage your work and how you manage your time. I think there's a lot of power in it, but like that's a key distinction between like, am I applying for an enterprise? I want to speak about there's this concept called T-shape. It's called breadth plus depth. So it's like depth is like you going down,
Right.
and T is like you go wide. And I think if you think about enterprise, you are hired for depth. Like it's like I was hired for this role, and I'm going to go deep in this role.
Okay.
It's like very, very
Yeah.
like straight line. If you go for a startup, you are hired for a role, but there's an expectation that you're willing to go wide as well, right? So you're not just limited
That
to the one
spectrum
thing you're
gets
hired.
that spectrum gets bigger because you're not really certain what if the roles are
Because the
a fit.
business,
Yeah.
yeah, because the business is growing and changing every day. The
Right.
startup is trying to figure out product market fit. It's trying
Yeah.
to figure out what works and doesn't work. So if like what they thought was the role today changes because the business changes.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, do you have that flexibility? Do you have that scrappiness, right? Do you have that kind of like, and that's a superpower to
Yeah.
develop. So this isn't like a like don't do startups, do enterprise. I actually prefer that environment because it allows someone like myself to wear many different hats and try many different things. And it helps me learn what I like and dislike
Yeah.
in business and software, and that informs my where I work in the future,
Yeah.
the ideas that I pursue, and stuff like that. But again, it's so to summarize everything I just said. If you're looking to interview and you have the technical skills and you're thinking about how to best present yourself, I would say ask yourself these two questions: Is this an early stage company or a later stage company?
Yeah.
If it's early stage, expect and communicate your ability to be flexible
Yeah.
and willing to cross lines to get something done. If it's enterprise, talk about how you are really interested in the specialty of the role you're hiring. I want to go deeper in this area. I
Yeah.
want to develop a mastery in this area.
Yeah.
Um, and even mention your ability to communicate effectively across departments because there's a lot of bureaucracy in
Yeah.
these big companies. So like
Could
that at a
imagine.
10-person startup, at a 10-person startup, I could just hit you up and be like, yo, bro, like, are we
Let's
gonna really do this? It doesn't
all
make
right.
sense.
Let's do this cool shit.
1,000-person, yeah, 1,000-person company with department heads and budgets, and like
So many
they've made this decision a year ago, right? Like,
and then it's going through
forming
so many people. There's so much wider a level of communication going on, and then like yeah, it's a lot harder to get a
yeah, you
decision, I'm sure.
that's yeah. So you even highlighting that you can communicate and cross cut effectively is
Yeah.
huge. And then that's the business. And then you have to ask yourself, am I more junior? Am I more senior? If you're junior, talk about your ability to learn quickly and your enthusiasm around learning. Make the person feel excited to have the opportunity to teach you.
Yeah.
If you're more senior, talk about your ability to take uncertainty to certainty. Make that
Make
person feel
feel
safe and
secure. Yeah, it's
comfortable.
security. I understand.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get it.
because it's like if I hire this person as a
I don't want to
senior
think about this
for a
person.
team,
Yeah.
I don't want to think about this problem.
Yeah.
I'm bringing you on. It's a joke, but like I'll joke with some of my senior engineers that I've hired in the past, and it's like friendly joke. But they'll come in and they'll be like, "Oh, man, that's a crazy problem to solve." I'm like, "That's why we hired you, bro.
And
I don't want to solve that.
then just slam the door.
That's why we brought
Boosh.
you in." You know what I mean? Yeah. And listen, it's still collaborative. You still work
Yeah,
together and
yeah.
stuff like that. But generally, the sentiment is that like I'm obviously we're all here to help and support each other if you're on a healthy team. But the general sentiment is you're coming in to talk as an equal
Yeah.
about solving this problem versus a junior is coming in to get guided on how to solve the problem.
So it's like
And that's a key
yeah.
distinction.
So it's
It's the
basically
difference
being a
between
very good apprentice versus being a very good leader at the down nitty
right.
gritty of it.
And if you think like, I don't know any of your DJ friends, but if you were to think about creating a mix with one of your DJ friends,
Yeah.
that conversation between you two is different than if I come to you and I say, "Hey, I don't know nothing about DJing because I don't. Can you make a mix with me?"
Yeah.
Right? Like your expectation for both
Right.
is very different, even
Right.
though the problem's the same. And it's that same thinking.
Yeah.
That's and recognize who you are when you're interviewing, like which one you are for
Right.
that role, and optimize your communication for the one that makes sense.
So I want to give a little like add on to what you're saying because I kind of related to the entry level people. You know, all the time, we get when I was working at Sweatbox, we had so many new members come through, and you got all types of people with different attitudes, different kind of like backgrounds, just different energies, right? A lot of times, one of the things I look for when I see somebody is um I don't mean this in a mean way, but somebody just doesn't ask questions. They hear the coach, they tell you, "Hey, I'm going to need you to jab 15 seconds straight, and then the next 15 seconds I need you to do this different jab." And then that's it. You know what I'm saying? And then it's also like, is this person coming every day? Do I have to remind this person to come every day? You know what I'm saying? Like I get the whole like being a good student is so like it like I like being at a professional boxing gym, anybody has there's a lot of people that are potentially good, boxers. That could be a good boxer. But I'm not looking for the potential fighters. I'm looking at the person that's it's easy to teach, that's easy to work with. That doesn't I don't need to
Right.
tell this person to show up every day because that's he's really about this
It's
life. You know what I'm saying?
unlikely. It's unlikely that in your professional career, regardless of who you are,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's unlikely that you are a once in a generation talent
Yeah.
that none of these rules apply to.
Yeah.
If you are the Tyson of coding, if you're the Tyson of DJing, it does not matter anything we're saying. You're so good that the world will bend around
Right.
your ability. Chances are you're not that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But because it's just like there's like five of them,
Yeah.
right, in the entire world at any given time. So fair. For most of us, even the ones that are really good, I'm really good at what I do. You're good at what you like. Even the ones that are really good, it still benefits everything that you're saying, and it does pin whether if you're junior or senior, startup or enterprise. There is one important underlying concept that you kind of touched on, which is like people want to be around people. It's a time investment. And in my opinion, there's a book called The Courage to Be Disliked that mentions this, but says everything is interpersonal. Everything in the world is relationships in one way or another, right? And ultimately, people want to hire people that they want to be around.
Yeah.
I'm going to invest. If you're a senior, that means I'm architecting with you.
Yeah.
If you're a junior, that means I'm educating you.
Yeah.
Do I want to be around you?
Yeah.
Do I enjoy being around you? And I think you're right. One of the ways of
Does it give me energy to be give me passion back to what I'm doing right now, right?
Are you taking or giving? And if you're
Yeah.
able in your questions, in your energy and how you think about stuff, or if you're giving that person energy, then that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think that's step one. Like, be someone people want to work with.
Yeah.
And try to give energy. And I think if you're wondering, well, how do I give energy? It goes back to some of those earlier tips. If you're junior, ask questions, be curious, give I don't have an ego and I want to learn and be better.
Yeah.
And if you're a senior, give the energy of you can trust me, I'm reliable, I know how to solve hard problems that I've not encountered before. So you will have peace.
Yeah.
If you work with me.
Yeah.
We will be good.
Yeah.
I'm bringing you a sense of certainty. And I think that's important, but fundamentally, doesn't matter if you're curious, it doesn't matter if you bring certainty. If you come off as an asshole or uninterested, you're not gonna get it, right?
Yeah, totally.
I don't want to spend, bro. Other than my wife and kid, the people that I work with and code with, I spend the most time with in some way or another.
Yep.
And if I don't like you, that means you are draining me 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah.
That's exhausting, right? And it goes both ways too. If you're interviewing and the person you're talking to doesn't give you a good vibe, unless you absolutely have to take that job, because I think economics are important and making sure you have a roof over your head is important. In the hierarchy of needs, that's more important than dealing with an asshole.
Yeah.
But all things being equal, if you are interviewing and you have a little bit of wiggle room there, don't work in an environment that's going to drain you, because it's hard to learn and grow.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like the system is in place to help you do that.
Totally. No, totally. I think who would want to learn or grow anywhere when you're just being fucking so upset? You just don't want to even be there, right? So, I've been curious, and I wanted to ask a little bit about your journey with the startup, the NFT startup. I just want to know, how much did you get into it, and how much you actually learn about the crypto space? Because I know you're not really an expert, but I could imagine you learned a lot from this journey. So I kind of want to dig into that, because I'm a very big crypto guy. So I want to kind of get your takes on it, and I want you non-biased, because I don't want you to be just because I'm a crypto guy, I don't want you to be fluffing it up.
No,
I
I
want to
don't
hear,
even.
yeah, I want to hear your like real biased takes on non-biased takes on this topic. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think ask the more specific or the more specific because it's such a vast topic.
yeah,
If you have any like specifics, I'll definitely share my opinion. But specifically, just to give some context to my background, I was working at American Express,
yeah,
large financial institution. Um, I was kind of finished with that chapter,
yeah,
and I just wanted to do something drastically different. So I joined a small group of people learning and teaching each other on how to write smart contracts.
right,
Smart contracts I think it's a little bit like I'm really watering down, but
yeah,
in Ethereum introduced this concept of a smart contract, which is like a piece of code that lives on chain that can be executed and is generally there's some architectural patterns, but generally the code doesn't change.
yeah,
And that brings good and bad. The good is it's trustless. You don't have to trust me if I tell you that if we use a smart contract, the splits are the splits because this contract defines it. It lives on chain. No one is changing
change it.
it.
And if
So
it
like,
changes it, you would know who did the changes, right?
right. Well, in theory, this goes back to the architecture, and we don't have
Okay.
to like get too technical
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
In
yeah.
theory, it's immutable. That address, as long as you call that address, like it's immutable.
Yeah.
There are ways to upgrade that have developed over time, it really is a balance because if you're fully upgradable and you're fully like changeable, then you lose the trust factor
Yeah.
and you might as well not even really be on chain. It's kind of like it's weird to pay that penalty
Yeah.
of being on chain and like lose all of like the trust that people buy into it. On the flip side, if you're so rigid and you're like 100% trustless, this thing will never change. It's impossible for me to change it. I built it in a way that it cannot be changed. This will never go away. This will always exist in this manner.
Right.
And then there's a bug or vulnerability, and people can like rug you. Then like you're fucked,
Right.
because you can't change it. You literally cannot change it. So there is a balance there, and it's really hard to get right.
Yeah.
So I started learning how to write these smart contracts, and it's called like in this language called Solidity. Did that for a bit. Got reached out by a CEO of a startup. Super charismatic guy. Really enjoyed his presence. He just flat out told me, he was like, "Hey, I know you're doing some Solidity. You seem to be okay at that, but your other specialty, specifically coming from American Express and building good UIs and clients,
Yeah.
that's what I think you can build for my like crypto startup." And he's like, "But I promise I'll expose you to people in the space that are writing smart contracts, and you'll write them if you want." Like, pretty much giving me like, hey, you have the skill set that isn't really it's crypto related, but it's not exclusive to crypto that I need. But I'll feed your appetite for wanting to learn more about crypto if you join. So like a little bit of the left and the right. Took the job, great experience. Some positives, some negatives. But overall, I'd say it was a really good experience, and that is what allowed me to really go deeper into the technical aspects of crypto. So understanding like that on-chain layer, that like smart contract layer. How do you interact with it? Why do you interact with it that way? Like the importance of wallets, the importance of security with wallets. So that's really where a lot of my like understanding of the space comes from. It's like that technical aspect and a little bit of like the culture aspect because I was interacting with a lot of people in this space, which I think is a unique perspective because it's very different. So I think it's closer to believers in the space. There are people that are in crypto because they think it is purely a speculative asset that they can make money off. And like there's some truth to that for sure. And then there are people that are like, I believe in this technology as a way for the future.
Right.
I don't know how that looks, but money aside, this can change the way we fundamentally operate in the world.
Right.
And I think I was closer to that group of people because that's usually the people that if you just wanted to buy a coin, then you could just buy a coin.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend time learning, auditing, writing
Right.
contracts and building apps and trying to like find use cases
Yeah.
is because you truly
Believe
believe
in the
in
system.
that thing.
Yeah.
So I was around a lot, I think, like the purists or the people that really like are trying to usher in.
That's very interesting.
And I wasn't around a lot of like the like you see them a lot like on Twitter threads or on IG or whatever. They're
With their
like,
profiles.
look at my chart and buy this coin, it's gonna
Right.
moon. Like I wasn't around that person a lot, but certainly like I saw them. I know what they are. I know
Yeah. Right.
that
Right.
game as well. Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you this: how, like, from the experiences of the people that you dealt with, how, generally speaking, like, how do you feel like some of them are just? Let me reiterate this question.
Yeah, just
How,
say it straight out.
yeah, how many of them do you feel like they're delusional, or do you feel like they're really onto something?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna use this word,
Yeah.
and because I don't think the right word is delusional.
Yeah.
I think the right word is sunk cost. I think the sunk cost in crypto is super real. I don't know if you're familiar with that term or not, but even
Yeah.
if you are,
Yeah.
just for anyone listening, I'll like explain it. The idea of the sunk cost, and this is a phenomenon that happens in any area in life, right?
Okay.
Like this is not exclusive to crypto,
Right.
but the idea of the sunk cost is the more you invest into something, the harder it is to stop investing into it moving forward, even if the facts tell you not
To
to,
do. Okay.
because you've already invested time into it.
Right.
Right. So it's like if all you know how to do is cook and you figure out that no one's hiring chefs anymore, you're like, but I only know
Know
how
how
to
to
cook,
cook,
so I
so you're
guess I'll
gonna
just
keep
keep
doing it.
cooking.
Yeah.
Instead of stopping and being like, maybe I should learn another skill and do something else.
Right.
So I think in crypto, you have people, and you know what? Markets in crypto have like gone up and down, up
Yeah.
and down. So like, there's some, I can see how that story can be explained, but I think there is a lot of people that got into it, put money into it, and even if the facts are telling them that they're not as passionate or interested anymore, they have to kind of it's very hard to accept an L or accept that maybe something is not going in the way that they want. That's the sunk cost. So they keep doubling down and they go deeper in there and deeper
Yeah.
in there. So I do think that there's a good amount of people, even on like the tech side. There are people that like, I got funding to build a Web3 app,
Yeah.
and I raised $10 million, and we're not doing so good, and I don't know if we're gonna make it, but what do you want me to do? I've already been doing this, so I'm just gonna keep trying.
Right.
Instead of being like, maybe I should return this money back to my investors, take an L, and try pursuing another idea,
Right.
right? Or keep the investment and tell your investors we're gonna pivot to something slightly different,
Right.
because we're just not seeing the movement here that we thought. So I do think there's like a large part of the space
Yeah.
that is that. I also think there are real people solving real problems on there, and I do think there's real coins or real like assets that are generating value.
Right.
And I think it's very hard to know which one's which. And if I were
Yeah.
to give someone advice, I'd say like, one, look towards, this is for the general person.
Mm-hmm.
Look towards Web3 companies or coins or technologies, whatever, that you feel like solve a problem or is doing something interesting that you can grasp. Right. So I think what happens with a lot of people is that they don't have any financial background. They don't understand how finances work, how investments work.
Right.
So what they do is they hear someone that they sort of know or trust say, hey, this is going to do well. Trust me. It's yielding high.
Right.
Put your money in here. And like they let that be enough to put a lot of risk in their portfolio.
Right.
If you have $100 and you want to put $5 into a risk, that's fine. That's 5% of, well, maybe that 5% is pretty high, but like that's a percentage that you can be like, I can risk this.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are putting like 25%, 30%, 40% into things that like fundamentally they don't understand because they don't understand the math or the finance. That I think is how you're going to find yourself around people that are not just scamming, but even delusional. So like they're good people, but they just don't, they can't bring themselves to quit.
Oh yeah,
you know?
there's echo chambers all over the fucking place. It's pretty fucking bad.
But if you understand the problem they're solving, I think that like you're in a better position to say, I believe in this enough to put my money in. So the startup that I work for, that I used to work for NFTs, they're called Showtime.xyz. They recently, and it's by recent I mean like it's been a while. They've been doing this, and I don't know the details because this is after I left. But they now created an integration with Spotify for Apple Music, and I'm probably getting some of the details wrong. But generally, the way it works like this: artists can now through Showtime, if they have an upcoming song that isn't released, their fans can access exclusive NFTs as a pre-order to that song that can let them not only get the song sooner, but get merch and access to things sooner. Right. So like that NFT that you get on Showtime ends up being proof that you pre-ordered that album or that song before it was released. And it's like, then not only is it proof, but then you can use that, artist can use that as a ticket to like early concert tickets, early access to their blogs or websites, exclusive merch or whatever.
Because there's so many possibilities that you can do with it, right? Like I had some ideas myself.
Proof,
yeah.
Imagine you had proof. Imagine you are it's 2001 and you're 50 Cent, right? And you have Get Rich or Die Trying dropping, but it hasn't dropped yet. So you're not big yet, right?
I bought two albums. I bought 2 copies, by the way, when it came out.
Yo, that was the first album I ever bought as a kid. I was in like fifth grade or something, and that was the first album I ever asked my mom to buy me. But he hasn't blown up yet, right? Like In the Club hasn't taken off. Still very early, right? He only has a couple mixtapes out, How to Rob and like Heat and stuff like that. So that early era. Imagine if there was an NFT to pre-order Get Rich or Die Trying before it ever dropped. Now imagine you have that NFT, Get Rich or Die Trying comes out. It becomes this revolutionary album that like goes diamond. It's like crazy. But you have proof that no one else has, indisputable proof that you were up on this artist way before he blew up. And now what if 50 turned around and said, yo, those like 20,000 people that were up on me before I even became who I am now, I want to reward them. Here's a private concert for only the people that have that ticket. Or here's an extra song to download, or here's some free merch that only people that have that NFT. So like Showtime created that. So if you're in the music space, if you're in your space, someone who's been in this area for a while, you can look at Showtime, see what they're doing, see that thinking and say, I'm willing to invest. And maybe if Showtime had a coin, I don't think they do, but if they had a coin backing them, you can be like, I'm willing to buy some of their coin because I believe in the use case that they're solving for creatives and artists. That's very different than like buy my Looney coin because Looney is going to be the future. Like that's very like, how do you know it's going to be the future? Do you understand the finances? Do you understand the markets? Do you understand like all this stuff? Probably not, but you understand artists and music, and here's an NFT use case. Do you believe in that use case? If so, invest in that.
That makes sense.
That may not be delusional. And the thing is, there's a whole bunch of Web3 use cases. So even if you're not an artist, maybe you're an engineer like me. So I would put money into crypto. I do own some coins, but they're not coins based off of, or tokens based off of necessarily like this is a high yielding thing and it's going to move.
Right.
It's more like, oh, this is a Web3 technology company that launched their own coin, but they're solving a hard technological problem, and I see value in it. And I think this problem, as they keep solving it better and better, is going to make them be a
So
bigger and bigger
okay,
company, which is going to generate the value.
this is okay. So that you brought up an interesting point because this is where I get kind of like, how do you make this decision? Because like potentially somebody else could be solving that problem, another company, right? So like how so it's really just a matter of who's doing it better or who has better like branding, like marketing in that sense. Like who's the
It's
more
it's a it's a yeah, and this is not different than the stock market, right? So like I think the name of the game is like mitigating risk
yeah
and understanding like and setting expectation, right? So like setting mitigating risk to me is if you see a tweet about a coin and you put all your money in that coin, you've just took 100% risk that you're going to lose all your money.
yeah
We're pretty confident you're going to lose all your money, right? So how can we minimize that risk? Okay, well, let's a couple easy things. Don't put all your money into one thing. Understand how much of your money are you potentially willing to lose.
yeah
Okay, that you minimize some risk there. Diversification, all this stuff goes into that. All right, next thing you can do to minimize risk. If you are, if you do see branding or marketing that works, like a tweet that catches your eye, uh, what are the kind of questions? What are the kind of things that you can do help you understand if this is like valid? One and two, will it actually succeed? Those are two different things. Something that's valid may still fail, and that's just part of the game. But something that's a scam is not going to succeed,
yeah
right? So, one, figuring out if something's valid or not valid. All right, you've minimized risk again.
yeah
Now you're in this pocket of I'm operating with money, I'm okay losing, and with legitimate businesses.
yeah
Once you're in this space, is where I think my advice helps. Where it's like, how much do you know about the problem that it's solving, and do you believe in that problem that it's solving?
yeah
Because I think that not every investor thinks this way. I think this is more for the general person.
yeah
But I think that like, if you do that, you've minimized risk a lot. So you might still lose that money,
yeah
but you will maybe not feel as silly about losing that money because it's an amount that you understood you could lose,
yeah
and it's for a product that you really believed in. And I think it's the equivalent of like, if I were to bring it back to like the real world, you don't have to buy an Apple stock. You can buy the stock of an oil company, right?
yeah
And but if you were an individual, I'm not talking about like an index fund. Like if you're an individual and you can only buy one stock, you want to get into it. We can view tokens in a very similar way. I think it makes sense if it's like, well, do you know any oil companies? Do you know what makes a good one? You'd be like, no. Like, okay, well, do you know the difference between Apple, Google, or whatever? Like, yeah, I fucks with Apple because I have all their products. Okay, well, why don't you invest in Apple? You clearly believe in them, right?
yeah
Apple can still fail, can still go out of business. It almost did in the late 90s, right? But you understand that technology enough and that it's valid and you believe in it and whatever. And like, I think that's
so
how
much
you minimize risk.
right, definitely that's a much safer bet because at least you're going into something that you know what you're talking about versus listening to some fucking asshole on Twitter saying, "Oh, this is the one, blah blah blah. This is this is gonna go to
Yeah.
the moon or whatever."
And that's one side. So
Yeah,
that's the risk mitigation. The other one is like, what's your time horizon? Because everything I just said may flip on its head depending on your time horizon.
right.
So in investment, there's usually very broad. There's usually two types of categories. There's like long-term investments, and then there's like high-frequency traders.
Yeah,
They have completely different ways of thinking. Everything I just said makes sense if you're thinking about a long-term gain. And to be fair, in crypto, what in stock market might be 20 years of holding on to a stock, in crypto it could be like a year,
yeah.
2 years.
It's very
Like
volatile,
crypto
right?
moves so
Yeah,
it's very volatile. It moves so fast that like it should, but still, 2 years is a long time in crypto. It is a very long time to be around doing something.
right.
So like, are you trying to hold for a long time? And long time is relative to crypto, not relative to like the stock
Stop. Yeah,
market. Um, And or are you high frequency? Because if you are high frequency, maybe everything I said doesn't matter. So if you're high frequency, maybe um, you say, I know this is a shit coin,
Yeah.
but it's a shit coin. It's Doge.
Yeah.
I know it's a shit coin, but I know Elon just tweeted it, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna scoop some up, and
Just
then
ride the wave
Elon's gonna
real
tweet
quick.
again, and
Yeah.
then I'll dump it,
Yeah.
right? That's way riskier. It's way more scam prone.
Yeah.
Uh, it doesn't really matter about what you think is valuable. It's
Right.
more about what you think is more marketable in a moment, right? So it's a completely different way of thinking. But the whole goal there is to like buy at $1 and sell at like at like $1.10,
Yeah.
and then buy at like $1.50 and sell at like $1.60. So it's all about trading so fast. And even then, it's not even it's about trading, but in crypto, there's a whole world there. There's like ways of like sniping blocks on the chain. There's like bots that like there are bots out there that like uh if it sees that a large transaction is gonna buy $1 million versus Dogecoin at $1.10, it'll try to buy a whole bunch before it by like doing some weird stuff on the block,
Right.
so that you buy it right before the value goes up. There's like it's a whole scam. And I'll be honest with you, if you want to play that game and you think being early on Twitter is how you'll like win that,
Yeah.
probably not, bro.
Yeah.
Like, the sophisticated scammers out there are using bots. They're using transactions
They
on
have
the chain.
they have game plans. They have like insider information, all types of shit. Cause it's the Wild West though.
And it's the same thing from when me and you, people may not know on the show, but me and you had a small run with Fortune Locker,
Yeah.
where we were like flipping sneakers and flipping merch. Our advantage was that we had a street team that was willing to go on the line and
Yeah.
just buy some stuff to flip. That was our advantage. The reason why we had that advantage and not like other advantages was because there was no way we had the resources
Yeah.
to compete against bots online.
Yeah.
They were just too good.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing about the scam, like the high frequency trading for crypto. You're not going to beat like the people that have spent millions of dollars on their bot strategy
Yeah.
to buy tokens that are about to be hyped up.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know what's crazy? Probably the general public of the population don't even know that this is even happening. They just think this is just people doing it by themselves. Like it's crazy.
Which is why I said, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Which is why I said it's helpful to just say, do I understand what's going on here? When it comes to like flipping tokens, most people don't understand, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to like, I use Showtime because you understand artists, you understand brand building,
Yeah.
you understand content creation. So an NFT that's pegged to bring value there, you can understand that,
Yeah.
and you can like get behind that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's a safer way of thinking, because you at least could explain it.
Right. You know, it's crazy because from my experience getting into crypto, you know, it was off of just kind of like getting into the hype at first. This was like very, very early when like I don't know, like maybe like pre-COVID or whatever. And then I was just like, all right, well, now we have all this time because we're in lockdown. Let me really learn this stuff. So I took the time and actually learned everything. You know, I learned a lot of stuff and like what everything's like, the basic stuff. You know what I'm saying? Nothing really. I don't really I never really got into. I haven't been researching, you know, other tokens or like other services just yet because I put a pause on investing because I made a transition to Japan or whatever. That's beside the point. My thing is that what I'm trying to illustrate is that I go on Twitter and some of the things people say on these threads, I'm like, bro, do you not know the basics? Like, you didn't even do no research. Like, you don't even understand what a cold wallet, a hot wallet is. Like it's crazy like how uneducated our people are in this space, and I see why there's so many scammers. And then it being is unregulated, and you know, it's just like I said before, it's a digital Wild West right now. You know, like people are just
100%. There's this article, I'll share it with you after the pod, and you can post it on any links or anything like that. but it's called it's an old article, old like 5 7 years ago, but it's basically crypto and it's talking about crypto, but it's called like a dark crypto is a dark forest.
Yeah.
It basically explains everything very well that you're saying right now, but the gist of it is that like crypto is a dark forest, and the way this dark forest operates is the moment you reveal yourself or make yourself visible, like the moment you shed light on yourself in this dark forest,
Yeah.
the entire forest attacks you. And that's what crypto is. The moment you express anything crypto related publicly, you get a sea of
Oh
scammers that
my
just
god.
target you
Yo,
right
for
after they
real.
you. It's 100%. Like, even if you have this clip and we're talking about crypto, doesn't even matter what we say.
Yeah.
If you post it on Twitter, X, whatever, you're gonna get 100 bots underneath talking about their fucking shit coin, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Or like, hey, this service was able to do my seed recovery. Put it in here, and you get your fucking.
I got
wallet.
I got random
Yeah.
fucking profile, like, NFT profile dudes liking posts. I'm like, bro, I know your shit is a bot. Like, it's so fucking terrible. And like, yo, it's so bad that I had got hit up by women on WhatsApp randomly. Be like, hey, like, just trying to get it. They're trying to play this whole, like, they're interested in me, trying to go on a date. And then like, yo, I had this one crazy fucking bitch fucking just like hit me up, and she was just like, oh, like, she's just trying to get to know me, and then she's like trying to get cool with me, and then all of a sudden she just starts talking about crypto and all this stuff, and then talking about, oh, you should buy this coin, blah blah blah. Like, it was crazy. I'm just like, I'm just like, what the fuck? I know what the fuck who you are. You're probably just some random, like, Indian dude that's like, you know what I'm saying, like some fucking West Bubble fuck that's just trying to fucking like hack me right now and scam me. It's so fucking crazy how like I'm getting hit up on WhatsApp. Like, how you even get my number? Like, even regular scammers never even get my fucking number. You know what I'm saying? So it's pretty yeah. If that dark forest is real, like that shit.
Yeah,
I never seen no shit like that.
And to kind of like, I think it's important for people to understand their risk, think about that stuff, understand where they're putting their money,
Yeah.
and even understand that like legitimate businesses doing legitimate stuff, which there are in crypto, can still fail. That doesn't make them a scam. It just means they failed. There is also a bunch of scams out there too. And I think when people want the promise of crypto, the financial promise, oh, the ability to make some money a little bit quicker than it would in the stock market,
Yeah.
I'm losing trust in institutions, whatever. I think you have to also acknowledge the flip side of that. If something is able to move quicker, that means it's true on the opposite side. So there are Web3 companies doing amazing stuff that they otherwise couldn't do. The same reason why they can do that is the same reason why all the scammers have an opportunity to scam, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to like, I think about the dot, and we can kind of start closing on this.
Yeah.
I know we're running long on time, but
yeah.
The crypto reminds me of the .com bust.
Yeah.
I was young, but a mentor of mine who passed away, rest in peace to Michael. He started a business that went bust in the .com era, and I remember I was growing up. He kind of would talk about it a little bit, but I don't know the exact stat, but in like 1999, 1998, whenever the .com bust happened,
Yeah.
before that there was like this is a fake number to just illustrate my point. There was like 100,000 like websites that were all kind of like bullshit, but they were raising like a ton of money. Like, oh, I have a dog shoe website. Here's $50 million. Oh, I have a knit website. Here's $100 million. And at the end of it, after the bust and the crash, years later, at the end of it, we get Amazon, we get Google, we get the Apple, we get these winners.
Right.
And I think that's really where crypto is now, where there is no one knows what'll work, but they feel there's opportunity here. And because of that opportunity, we are seeing some things like a Coinbase emerge,
Right.
a Showtime, like some of these companies. We don't know who's going to win, but certainly what we know is of like the 100,000 players, maybe 1,000 will survive, and they will be super strong, super
Well,
reliable, super. But that's
they'll be the
but
Amazon
we
of
don't.
crypto. They'll be the fucking Google of crypto.
But we
So
don't know.
right,
No one knows who that. It's like when people say like, "Oh, if you would have invested in Apple in 2003, you would
right.
have had $1 million right now." And it's just like, yeah, but no one knew that in 2000. No one knew Apple would have made the iPhone in
It's
2003.
just like
You
us
know what I
looking
mean?
at tokens. There's sea of tokens right now. Which one? How do we choose? At that time when Apple was on its rise, there was probably sea of apples. You know what I'm saying? How do you choose from which one which? You know, that's a
How do
very
you know they would have had a Steve Jobs? You know
yeah,
what I mean? That would
yeah,
have like changed the game. How do you know that Microsoft was going to have a Bill Gates? Like, how
yeah.
do you know some of these things? Some of it is like, I think for me, it goes back to,
It's
for
just
me,
doing your
someone
diligence and
who's
research at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? And really being about the
right.
culture too.
And one of the best ways of doing diligence research and understanding culture is what are you currently an expert in?
Yeah,
Is there an opportunity in that space with your expertise? Because my ability to evaluate a company based on my skill set is way higher than my ability to evaluate a company not based on my skill set, because I know what works and doesn't work for my skill set.
right.
So if you're a DJ, right? Imagine if there's a company that was like, "Yo, invest in my DJ company. We give zero splits to the DJ."
Right.
You'd be like, that company is not going to make it,
Yeah.
right? That's an obvious example, but like that's my point. But maybe if you don't know about DJing, you'd be like, "Oh, okay, cool. Here's some money," because you just don't understand why that would never work.
Especially because now it's why a lot of these business people are going crazy, was going crazy for the crypto space, because it was just a new what's the word, not horizon, but what's that word, what's the word when the American first American travelers, they were,
Gold rush.
not the
Like the
gold
gold
rush,
rush.
it was the
Frontier.
yes, it's a new frontier for everything, for music, for commerce, e-commerce. Like you just have this new area of like, oh shit, we could, if we rush in now as business owners, as CEOs, to get into this space now, we'll be solidified in that spot, But
Yeah, and people are I think people are fundamentally optimistic.
yeah,
And I think when they hear new frontier with new opportunity, with new wealth generation, with things that break through the system, that's very exciting. And I think that is true for crypto. That's my unbiased opinion.
yeah,
I also think it's true that that same energy welcomes everyone who doesn't have good intentions.
yeah,
And it's very hard for people to know one for the other. And I think that if you look at the stock market, we have a long history of understanding stock market risk.
yeah.
And even easy bullet points that you can just Google, TikTok, watch a YouTube, watch some of those, and then just change the word stock market to crypto. And a lot of the same best practices can be applied.
True, true. Um, let's leave it on that note. Let's there's a lot of stuff, other stuff I wanted to get over cover, but I already knew halfway like, yeah, we're gonna have to just do this another episode, so we're gonna set
Yeah.
up another one. But yo, Lois, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. I had a good talk. We had
And
what's
next
up?
time, let's try to get your camera on. It was weird not looking. I like looking at a man
Yeah,
at his
yeah,
face.
yeah. I know. I'm still working the kinks out, but I'm actually getting like legitimate internet soon, so I'm gonna be able to like do all types of stuff with my internet because I have the bandwidth and whatever. So, but yeah, I got you, man. I mean, even if you wasn't able to see my face, the episode was great. I think we got a lot of stuff here. So, but yeah,
It was a lot of fun, man. Always a lot of fun. All right,
all
my
right,
dude.
brother. I'll talk to you soon. Peace out, man. We'll talk. We'll talk
Peace.
later. Send me that link, by the way.
For sure.
All right.
For sure.